Following the scientific revolution comes a largely European intellectual and scholarly movement that started in the 17th century. Welcome to the Enlightenment period. The Enlightenment period from the 17th to the 18th century was a movement in European society that was advanced through philosophical and intellectual thought. Having succeeded the scientific revolution of the 17th century, scientific thinking plays a huge role in the challenges against conventional monarchies, religious hierarchies, and the support for the liberties of the common man. These ideas of skepticism would go on to culminate into the French Revolution, wherein the monarchy was abolished in favor of a republic establishment of the U.S. Republic after driving out the British in the U.S. Revolution. This also caused a decline in the power of the Catholic Church throughout Europe. This was a period of reason over conventions.
Oral interpretation in the Enlightenment period. Elocution and pronunciation. Oral interpretation during the Enlightenment period began to make dramatic changes when, by 1750, a shift in the meanings of elocution and pronunciation took place. While the word elocutio referred to effective literary or oratorical style, elocution, on the other hand, became the manner of oral delivery as opposed to the more written style of a composition. In other words, elocution was now being emphasized as an oral activity rather than the mere writing of a manuscript. The word pronunciato, on the other hand, originally meant to be the management of voice and body, became the modern word pronunciation, and focused on the correct phonation of individual words instead of focusing on the individual's vocal delivery. The shifts in the connotation of these words would mark the changes that were about to occur on how oral interpretation is taught and practiced during the Enlightenment period. During this period, an important group of writer-speakers from England, the English elocutionists, came into being. Among these elocutionists are Thomas Sheridan, born 1719 to 1788, and John Walker, born 1732 to 1807, who both brought about the natural schools and mechanical schools of oral interpretation, respectively.
Born in 1719 in Dublin, Ireland, to Dr. Thomas Sheridan and Elizabeth McFadden, Thomas Sheridan was a well-known actor, theater manager, and a teacher of elocution. He was also the father of famous dramatist Richard Brinsley Sheridan, who himself was an actor. In 1739, he graduated BA from Trinity College, Dublin, where he got his MA at some time before 1743. In 1743, Sheridan made his debut as an actor, playing the title role of Shakespeare's Richard III at Smock Alley, Dublin. In the next year or two, he became immensely popular and was at the time the most popular actor Ireland had ever seen. In the 1740s, he became manager of the Dublin Theatre. Later on, Sheridan and his family moved permanently to England in 1758, where he established himself as an educator and teacher of elocution. The natural school of elocution viewed that elocution should follow the laws of nature to achieve certain tones, looks, and gestures that would serve to amplify the passions and emotions of the speakers. He later published his courses of lectures on elocution, which opposed artificialities and stressed that the method of what is called the natural conversation in the oral presentation of literature. His thesis was that, since the body and the voice are natural phenomena, it should stand to reason those natural methods and bring out their potential in oral presentation. The replication of these natural tones, looks, and gestures became the key towards Sheridan's form of teachings. Sheridan's need to be specific, however, began to evolve a system of markings and cues for the discovery and reproduction of these natural tones and gestures, and had become, as judged by modern standards, was more mechanical than natural.
John Walker's Mechanical School. John Walker was an English actor, philologist, and lexicographer who was born at Colney Hatch, Middlesex, on the 18th of March 1732. Early in life, he became an actor, his theatrical engagements including one with Garrick at Drury Lane and a long season in Dublin. In 1765, he left the stage. After some experience in conducting a school at Kensington, he commenced to teach elocution, and in this found his principal employment for the rest of his life. In seeming opposition to Sheridan's natural school, the mechanical school of elocution had placed more importance to the emphasis of markings and other mechanical devices that aid the body in voice, instead of focusing more on the projection of the material. When John Walker published his Elements of Elocution in 1781, he professed to take his cues from nature, just like Thomas Sheridan. However, he couldn't resist including the specific rules and markings for the slightest variations of vocal tempo, inflection, force, and for other aspects of gestures in order to aid in his teachings. The so-called concreteness of these markings appealed to the public due to how easier it is to exactly be told what to do rather than figuring things out through experimentation. Walker did not intend for his followers to place such a huge emphasis on his markings, as he only intended for these to be mere aids towards finding the satisfactory projection of the literary material on hand. With Sheridan's natural school and Walker's mechanical school, a split between the two ways of teaching oral interpretation persisted for 150 years.
Of the English elocutionists of the 18th century, there are two more influential figures who contributed to the teaching of oral interpretation, albeit they were less prolific and influential than Sheridan and Walker. John Mason wrote an essay on elocution or pronunciation. The first book to include the word elocution in its title put heavy emphasis on the right management of the voice. James Burke, on the other hand, was a political philosopher who grew interest in speech probably because of his political activities. His book on the art of speaking discussed the rules for expressing the principal passions and humors. This anthology of readings that carefully documented passions and humors was based on the theory that nature had given every passion its proper physical expression that can only be projected through careful attention to physical features such as the eye.
The closing years of the 18th century saw an increased interest in the use of voice and body in the oral presentation of literature. Sheridan had set up a natural school, purportedly based on the laws of nature. Walker, on the other hand, had established a mechanical school, based on the same strive for natural laws, but became more preoccupied with markings and charts. It is understandable then that the followers of these men tended to emphasize their differences rather than their similarities, and that some degree of confusion and dissension resulted. It cannot be denied, however, that the teachings of these two schools greatly contributed to the development of modern oral interpretation. The development of oral interpretation in the Enlightenment period would go on to serve as the foundation of the 19th century scientific movement of elocution, as led by the likes of James Rush, Francois de Sartre, Samuel Silas, and others.